The Hualapai Tribe is a federally recognized Indian tribe located in northwestern Arizona. Hualapai means people of the tall pines. An executive order established the Hualapai Reservation in 1883. The reservation covers about 1 million acres along 108 miles of the Grand Canyon and Colorado River. We are located in 3 northern Arizona counties: Coconino, Yavapai, and Mojave. The reservation's landscape varies from rolling grassland to thick forest to rugged canyons. Elevations range from 1,500 feet at the Colorado River to over 7,300 feet at the highest point of the Aubrey Cliffs. Unlike Navajo, Pueblo, or Hopi, the Hualapai and Havasupai have retained ownership of the original lands. The Hualapai chiefs who played a vital role in this struggle are Hualapai Charlie, the Big Chief, Levy Levy, a peace chief, and Shrum, a war chief. Their leadership and courage are critical to the history of the Hualapai Tribe. As of 2024, the Hualapai Nation has a population of 2,394 tribally enrolled members, according to the Hualapai Enrollment Department records. This figure reflects the current size and strength of our community. Middle Mountain,
Uitu mu'ukapa,
Red Rock,
Wikahuatapa,
Sarbat Mountain,
Ha'amtepa,
Plateau People,
Hokaudva Kopaya, or Hokaudva Kopaya,
Clay Springs,
Atuvapa,
Grass Springs,
Tanikapa,
Hackberry,
Wakwehpa,
Milkweed Springs,
Helapa,
Peach Springs,
Ikatpa,
Pine Springs,
Haksahpa,
Hualapai Mountain,
Matwalapa,
Big Sandy,
Hakskalapa,
Mahone Mountain,
Akiachapa,
Juniper Mountain,
Walkichapapa.
This one is another one that the Spirit taught me. It's real beautiful. I like it. Old Hualapai healing song. Hagama debo le ahego, hagama dego, hagama debo le ahego, hagama dego, hagama debo le ahego, hagama dego, hagama debo le ahego, hagama dego. Hagamade bole yahego, hagamade go, hagamade bole yahego, haya yo yo, haya yo ho arego, hagamade go, hagamade bole yahego, hagamade go, hagamade bole yahego, hagamade go, hagamade bole yahego. Ho ma ha ma.
Jokamicha, my name is Flora Selena. When they told me I had to leave, I was sad. And I asked them why. They said, it's winter time, it's time to go home. I said, home is here, no home. They brought us out. We came to Peach Springs. It was a strange place, but we had a home right down below here. My grandpa built a house there, and that's where we came home to. They put me in school. They told me I had to go to school, and I didn't know how to speak English. I was very fluent in Hualapai because I was just raised by my grandparents and always was around them and my uncles, and we never spoke English. Coming to Peach Springs and learning the language, just learning, just my beginning of learning was the most difficult thing, but I overcame it. Then to go to boarding school, then to learn other skills has taught me to be who I am today as Flora.
Good afternoon. My name's Waylon Honga. Nya Waylon. Peach Springs is home. It'll always be home. I'm one of 8 kids. And at one time, all of my siblings lived here, probably around 2010. I come back home and see everybody, my family, see all my friends, relatives. And so it was always a good feeling to come back home. Again, it's the song from the sitcom Cheers. It's where everybody knows your name. Even though I'm not fluent in our language, I can't be anything else but Hualapai. That's who I am, through and through, inside and out. I can't be anything else. How could I be anything else? I'm a Hualapai person from Peach Springs, and I like that. There's only 2,400 people on this planet who can call themselves Hualapai, and I think we need to be proud of that. So it's a pretty exclusive club. Not just anybody can join.
Nya Georgine Paya Molnika, Hualapai Paqib Jin Haksah Payu Niu Imedia, Vaktai Nika Hak the Quivaka. Yakwe Quakayu Nijit Quichika Vakaichik, Kaitek Quakayu Uniu Kanava Ichim Aikokwau Kanava. I'll go ahead and share what is now called the Game and Fish Department. That building, I remember, was a super. They used to say supermarket, and some would call it store, market. And the managers, I remember, were Mr. and Mrs. Jones. They were Anglo from. I think they were back east somewhere, but they had their own children, and they attended the Peach Springs school here, and being here and running the market, they were starting to speak the language just listening to the elders. At that time, the elders would just speak Hualapai to the employees there, and they were all Anglo. Gradually, they started speaking the very simple Hualapai to grandmas and grandpas, and I remember walking down my great grandmother, who always they used to make their own shopping bags from old pair of jeans. They would sew it together and make a shopping bag. And when it was time for shopping, she would ask me to walk her down. The owner or manager of the market there, where Game and Fish is now, they always butchered the cows that they bought from what they had here was tribal herd. They would raise their cattle, and the manager, owner of the market would buy cattle from them and would butcher their cow, and would sell it. And a lot of times, if they bought a nice, huge cow or whatever, it would have a lot of fat. And grandmas would always tell the man, the owner, the manager, whatever, but would tell him, don't ever throw the fat away. Put it in a box, leave it outside the door, and we'll get it. For that was the grease that they would use to make their fry bread. And it had a different taste at that time. So they would collect that. Grandmas would collect not a whole bunch, but whatever they needed would take and leave some for others. So that was done. He would do that every time they butchered a cow for hamburgers, steaks, or whatever. And they would, in return, at some time, some of the grandmothers would give the individual or the family either a small basket or a beaded necklace in appreciation of him doing that for the elderly. So as of today, I speak both Hualapai and Havasupai, and that the two languages are not any different. It's just a dialect. So with that, I have this. I had this interest in writing the language. Growing up with my paternal grandparents, I developed my own orthography, and now when I look back at the development of my orthography, I don't have it where I could see it. Or I used a pencil instead of a marker on an ink pen. But finishing my education at Phoenix Indian High School, I started college at ASU and went for a year, and then there was an opening at the elementary, so I applied for it, and this was in 78. That's when Title VII bilingual education was in function at that time. So I got the position for instructing the language and developing curriculum for each grade level. And as of today, I hardly ever hear that teaching in the language in the classrooms there at the elementary, but hired at cultural department, keeping that speaking of the language, reading and writing, and having that experience of teaching. I teach young to elders, I would say. So I have a love of doing that, and I try to remember old Hualapai, so I share that with the individuals that come to my language classes that I hold on Thursdays from 12 to 1. So I am there at the cultural department holding the position of Hualapai language manager.
Namul Lucille Cindy Wadahamaji. My maiden name was Cindy Jackson or Lucille Jackson, and I married Philbert Wadahamaji Senior, and he's also from this community. The store was there. They built a new store in the 60s, and it was right there where the same place where the store is. But I think it was in the 70s that they built that new store the way it is now, with the joining buildings to the east of it. There was a little store there where they sold all the dry goods, and Phoebe used to run it. Phoebe Chapaja used to be the salesperson there, and they used to call that Phoebe's store.
Right next to the Beecher's Drive-In was a gas station. I think it was a Union 76. I never saw it selling gas. Kendrick Rocha Sr. Made a go of it as a mechanic and fixed cars there for a little bit. Seems like it was a short time, but that was the only time I saw any kind of business running out of that gas station. I think there was like remnants of a hotel behind that gas station. Again, you just saw the walls. You didn't see a full building or any of the rooms there. You just saw some remnants of a wall of that hotel. The gas station, of course, I never knew the name of it. It was just the Shell gas station. It was run down. Paint was fading, chipping off. They were open most days. I don't remember who ran it before Ralph Goldenstein or the Goldensteins ran it, but they came back in about 1982, because Ralph was my age and he got on the bus. And so I saw this guy who was like 6'6" getting on the bus, pretty hard to miss. So I've known Ralph since about high school, but I don't remember, who ran it before the Goldensteins. And it functioned as the gas station. They had some soda and candy bars, if I remember. But I didn't go there very often. You just went there for gas. Later, as Ralph got older, as we all got older, he would sell chainsaw chains to the community and gas for your chainsaws. And so people would go there for that.
Nyamul Wainona senyala itke nyachita bibi korta tapaita itke nyatala Grant tapaita junior itnikin huak the bim chikya yuyit ha budget patalwa yakwakanabaya Route 66 Park kak bam ut nyu totem han bayum kinya goviami hak juum ka gas yoka hak ka ma ka thi at mwitwin hat new khandap kinto bam new chit bem kya and bamit kwepem kak yokiyut walpai na pajit wak saat jum kamaka kwekap jumiti we nyukavama good hak new gas station hak niyum hak dai ka hak pawiwo ka pajit hak terhat chika walpai pajit hak terhat jumutkin wit pai op kya vam hat hak terhat jumutit ham pai namak yam chika yuyet hawanya sivak handa mutkin hak kovyamit vambawit vam terak yam chimutam hansa am chik aye bypass New York jam vam kak kovyamitek vam yut ya tumut ke nyum sa am beginya good hak tayo ji kwat beginya it kakiem sit the kalyu dai nya tumut nya chita nya talat nya chita widam wit kun hat pan yep yu nya pan yep sotak wom chimut nya ha pai wasim nya moi bakwa themit ke nyum new kam ka kemik nyam ka kemik it haket kwema saat juga kemudian juga yukwayot jum halnya cita terhat mitkin hawasim nyam wai bakwa mit ke yutan bai mitkin haben halnya terhadam terak ko kekap mitkin wa hai ko vam amda kurum yut wa ket ko kekap mitkin yut vam kak nyu ya to kya ham te kwet pai hal yokin kumut saat jika yukwai saat jika anak yu saat jika kwetera mitkin bam op kya bam tu kira yam kakap chmuitwa good bak niyum kakyam ko kakap chatuk tu bak pai nut kakap chmuitwin to ham okya ham tu kira kurum yam kakap chmuitwa. And that was my memory of Route 66. Before the park was made here, there used to be a gas station there, and our Hualapai men worked there. And we used to go across there, and we used to get pop, and it was 5 cents. And we drink pop or candy, and that what used to be there that belonged to the Hualapai Tribe and the Hualapai community, and that's what we had there at Route 66 Park across from the lodge. My memories of the park before then was across the street was a clothing store. They had jewelry, they had clothing store, they had everything in there. And again, my mom worked there, Phoebe. And I used to go in there and try to help her. And there's a lot of good memories that we have of our Hualapai Route 66 Park. A lot of good memories throughout the Hualapai Route 66 area. Men and women would sit there and they'd laugh, they'd talk. The old man, I remember, they'd be all sitting there. They'd be talking Hualapai. You never heard English. They'd be talking Hualapai and they'd be laughing out loud. And it was harmony there back in the days. But now we don't hear that anymore. It's just animosity. It's negativity. And hopefully one day we can bring that back. And that's what I remember of the Route 66 Park. And I could go on with more stories, but I'm going to go ahead and close here. Mahamokya, Han Kyu, Hualapai Kwao ka haiku kwao ma kutap ka haiku kwao chatuk to pai Hualapai Kwao cham handa mit kinya. Yut nyaj Hualapai Kwao han mit ka to nyut kwao nyu kwalam yutja. Mahamokya.
I worked for GCRC for 18 years, and that was our first project. We secured a $5.5 million loan. It was a BIE guaranteed loan. We built the hotel and restaurant that took the majority of that multi-million-dollar loan, and we opened in June of '97. It's been, I don't know how many, 25 years now or something like that. And we also used the funds to build 2 buildings for river running. One was for more mechanics, to operate on the vehicles and also the outboard motors. And the other one was for the crew and all their what they needed to put rafts and customers on the river. And so that opened a little bit later, I believe. So maybe late '97. And the rest of those funds went to go build the facility out at Guano Point, Grand Canyon West. It's probably the ugliest building that's ever been built. I think we did that because we were running low on funds, and there was no other structures out there except those towers that are way at the point. And those are just steel beams, right? Because it held the trolley that crossed the Grand Canyon. The lodge, I was there from the beginning when we built it. I was on tribal council and I worked for GCRC, so I had a big role. And we should not have put it next to the railroad tracks. Even our attorney was asking, at least put it across the street. And I don't know, thick skulls or something. Too many rock fights as a kid, and you get calluses on your scalp. It just made sense to put it where the old building used to be. It was a motel, and it was with the mobile gas station, but it had a little garage with each room. I guess that's how they used to build motels way back in the day. It was a little garage for each room. And so it made sense just to put the new lodge and the new hotel right on top where the old one used to be. I've never worked there at the lodge. I've never even stayed in one of the rooms, even though I worked with the tribal corporation for 18 years. The mobile gas station, that's where the lodge is right now. That was only open on weekends. It didn't sell gas. It had soda, Coke and soda pop and candy bars. Mrs. Boyd, she'd be there on weekends. It seemed like most weekends it would be open, but they didn't sell gas at the time. I never saw any of the hotels operating. None of the hotels that used to be here, I never saw them in operation. They were all just shells of buildings that had really deteriorated, and probably most of them didn't have a roof. What was left was just the walls. So I never did see any of those 2 gas stations operating or any of the motels that were here.
The cradle board is made out of all kinds of plants. It's made out of mesquite for the frame, and it's made out of arrowweed, ithav. They call it ithav for the spring or the bed. And then the scooty is made out of chumho. There's many plants. If they didn't have these plants, they went ahead and substituted them with other plants that were pliable and could be used. But this frame was made out of mesquite root. Nal mesma is what they call it in Hualapai. And these take time, and then you cover it all on the sides with a cloth. The importance of the cradle board is to put the baby in the cradle board. It's for security. It's for safety. It's for helping them grow and be strong physically. It's when the baby's put in the cradle board and tied up on the and has his arms down, because when baby is when you have an infant, they jerk their hands and they hit their face, or they wake themselves up and they scare themselves, and it makes them feel, I guess, uncomfortable. So when you have their hands down while they're sleeping, they can sleep longer, and it's like they're still in the womb. And that's the main thing, is that to make them feel that security and the comfort of a cradle board. It's good, to have that cradle board too, because they sleep longer. And then when you pick them up and are traveling or just moving them from one area to another, you're not really touching them, and so they don't wake up. You can, have the tie. You can have two ties, one to keep tie on top, and then on the bottom you can untie that and change their pamper or whatever. At one time, the mattress that we used was made out of chakial, which is a rose bush, that cliff rose is what we used, and the bark of the cliff rose, because that's real fine and it's it don't itch. It's just real smooth. They use that for the mattress too, and they also use that for the diapers, because you could just take that cliff rose, the bunch of cliff rose, and just swish it around in the water and clean it, and then dry it, and then you could use it again. That's also used for a menstrual pad and things that you put close to your body. I mean, there's another bark called chakial, and that's off that juniper tree. They call it cedar tree, but it's not a cedar tree. That cradle board takes a long time to make. I like it when culture teaches how to make the cradle board, because it teaches the young ladies to just make their own cradle boards, and they don't have to pay that $300. Although in the end they might spend that much making it, because they have to travel. You have to travel distances to get the material, and so it's worth it to pay somebody that much for it. But I think maybe the price might be a little bit higher.
Gamucha Nya Rosemary Sullivan Iksichgam Huxgalaba Wanya. I just remember my first encounter of going to the clinic. We were still living in Valentine then, and my mom had a Galaxy Ford. A Ford Galaxy, I guess it was like a olive green, and I guess that color's back in vogue now, because I see that color on vehicles. And we had gone to see my aunt that lived in Vegas, and we got in a car accident coming off of Hoover Dam. A U-Haul trailer that was empty. The guy was going too fast. It just whipped in front of us, and I hit us head on, and I was in the front seat and that old Ford Galaxy. And at that time, the steering wheel had a metal thing. Anyway, it flew off and hit me in the face. Anyway, we made it back to Valentine, and I guess I had a concussion is what they called it. And my face was just black and blue on one side of my face, and I had to go to the clinic. And for some reason, I can still kind of hear that nobody really liked to go to the clinic. I'm not sure what happened there, but the old clinic that's right here across from HEW, I think it was built in 1950. Well, IHS was formed in 1955, so it was the late 50s, I think, when it was finally here. My husband remembers the clinic when it used to be down the road. I think we're the old schoolhouse in that area, because he's lived here forever. But my first encounter of going there was to go there, and then they it looked like I guess I got beat up because I had that my face was just swollen and black and blue. And anyway, that was my first time going there. They had a radio in the clinic that you could call, and that would connect you to the police. And it could also connect you to if an aircraft was coming in, like a fixed wing that was going to land, you could talk to the pilot on that one. And I remember that radio because even when I worked in White River, I could talk in the airplane to the Indian hospital because they had radios in all the IHS facilities. So that was how they talked. They were able to call the police, and they could talk to the pilots or whoever was on that radio. There was a dental area in the clinic. On one side of it, they had 2 chairs in there. We had a full-time dentist and a dental assistant that worked there. Had at least one doctor on board at all times. And like I said, for a long time, they were 24 hours a day. So they responded to everything that happened here. And for a small town, there's all kinds of things that happen, even terrible things that happen that they had to experience. So, car accidents, shootings, anything and everything that you could think of. The car accidents, I think, were the stories that they talked about that, because they did say that downstairs in the basement of the old health department, when people died, they would bring them there and just hold them until they decided where they were going to take them, either to a funeral home or however they were going to do it. When I worked there, that was one of the things that we had to order was body bags. You never think of body bags in a clinic, but we had to order them because we took care of Supai too. And Supai, you can't take bodies out of the canyon until you have a way of getting them out. So they have to stay. So you have to put them in a bag and wait or keep them cooler. So that's what they would do down there too. They would put them in the clinic when it had AC or air conditioning to keep it cold. And I think they put it in the basement here because it was cooler. So when the tribe decided to build that new facility, they turned this old clinic over to the tribe, and that's why the health department has it now for the healing house. I think for the clinic, it stayed until we moved to the new clinic in 2003, and I retired from IHS in 2013. So I was in that new facility for 10 years. Han Kyu.
Diamond Creek, when I was a kid, we didn't go there very often. I did go on the river probably when I was 7 or 8 years old. Back then, it was another company who came and showed the Hualapais how to run the river, all the equipment to buy. I don't know how that agreement came into place, but it was one of the companies where they used those rafts that were like 40 feet long. There's a real long circular tube where he sat and where all the equipment went and food and stuff. I remember holding on for dear life. And then when all I remember is when we finished, I wanted to see, where do you get off the river and how do you get back to Peach Rings? I was determined to see, where was I? Because I didn't know. I didn't know where these trips ended. I ended up falling asleep because it's hot on the river and the sun's beating down you, and I fall asleep and wake up getting into Peach Rings. But sometimes I think I was the youngest kid or one of the youngest kids to ever go on the river, one of the first ones. We never did go to the river. I don't know why. Maybe because it was 20 miles away or it was hot in the summertime. Me and my brothers loved riding our bikes, but we never rode our bike down there.
My name is Clarence Gonzalez. I came home in 2010, being gone for a long time. And my mom got me a gourd, and she said, why don't you go sing at Grand Canyon West with BJ, cousins. It opened me back up to that. I didn't know that it was going to be a roller coaster because I put myself into so much in my life. I was involved with drugs, alcohol, everything you can imagine. I was involved with it in the streets. So what I didn't know was you bottom out your soul. When you find yourself, that's who you're going to be, and it's up to you to deal with yourself. So if you're innocent and you haven't dug too deep into trouble and stuff, and that's a good thing to do. Keep yourself in that right path, Otherwise, when your traditional side comes out, or I don't even say traditional side, because for us Hualapais, that's just who we are, just a part of us. They've told us that those songs and how we are and those stories are in our souls already. And it's up to us to find us. So in different parts of our lives, they'll come and they'll manifest into who we are. So the beginning of time was something that I seen in my soul, learning to sing. And it did scare me because I didn't understand it. So deal with this. This is just something that's in your soul, and it's something that's a part of you, and you learn to deal with it. And I did. But it made me stronger, and it gifted me more songs as I got my life together. And that's what a lot of people teach about the Holy Spirit. We are the holy people. God, holy, the Holy Ghost, and Jesus Christ. But we are the holy people. So that spirit, I always say it's Guawa. I always tell my mother, it's Guawa. He's talking to me. He's teaching me something. I like to sing. And to me, it's not about bird, because to me, singing bird is actually the creation of the bird spirits. That's what God sent us as a bird spirit to hear, you know what I mean? And we came from creation all the way up, from animals to a human. And the balance of us infusing with the world and the different races of the world was a healing for us. And that's who we are today as young Hualapais. I learned this from singing. I learned this from listening to my soul. And to make a gourd, you got to have that inside your soul. You got to have that, because whatever you put in that gourd, how you use it, how you mistreat it, is something that might happen to you. You're singing to take a spirit home when we do sing. If you're going to make a gourd and use it for what its purpose is, you're singing for reincarnation of the body, of the spirit, cleaning the body out to take the spirit back to God, reincarnation of the spirit. And for some of us, our lineages, that's how we came to who we are today. So when we learn about ourselves, those are the stories that come to us, and that's our gifts because of what's going on today in the world. It's easy to take the gourd, saw it, where you want it, get your stick, your cottonwood, fit it, carve it, clean it, You could do glass, like shredded glass, or you could do sand to clean the inside after you scrape it in the gourd. But while you do that, have a good mind, have a good heart, because that's what you're going to be using when you sing. Some of us, those songs are healing songs for people. Our people were healers. They were shamans a long time ago. And they say that if a healing wasn't successful, that the singer would be shot, the healer. He would be shot, or he would be paid in buckskin if it was. So it was really a real thing back then. So if that was your purpose and your calling, that's what you're going to do. But you better know what you're doing, And that's really how I look at things today, is like, if I'm going to do this, I better be ready, because if I'm going to go sing with my gourd, then I'm going to take my medicine pouch with it. I carry cedar. I carry guat. I carry salt from the canyon. I carry sage that we picked on the east side. I go left to right, forward when I throw it, when I'm singing, to clean myself. When I'm going to sing, when I'm making a gourd, my mind has to be clear. I have to think of all this stuff right there, you know what I mean? And remember it. Because if I'm going to give this to somebody, I want them to carry what I just put in that gourd. That story, my story, their story, the family stories in that gourd, because when they pick it up, I want whatever's in that gourd to take charge of saying, hey, when that person needs a friend to talk to, when that person needs some good thoughts and good thinking, that's when I wanted to go in that gourd. So when we learn to make gourds, that's what we put in them. That's why we don't drink and we don't do other crazy stuff when we're making those gourds. The things we're putting in it, it's a whole different thing to just cleaning it and then hauling it off and then smoking it out. It's a very special thing. Gourd making and gourd songs are different. They're not just the bird. It has a cycle to it. It has a story to it. But there's other songs that come to it, and I'll sing a few. I don't have my gourd with me, but I will sing. This one's a coyote song. Hayo ba maragia me go way me hayo ba maragia me go way ho hayo ba maragia me go way me hayo ba maragia me go way hey hayo ba maragia me go way me hayo ba maragia me go way ho hayo ba magia me go way me hayo ba magia me go way ho way ma ha ma. And with these songs that came to me in my spirit, I seen them and I heard it, and then it just went in like something opened up in your soul, and it just said. So it's like, I believe that's why. So this is what I learned from just about the gourds. It's a very touchy subject. Some people will tell you, oh, you clean it out and you put palm seeds in it, or you can put juniper berries in it. But there's a lot more that goes on to just hollowing that gourd, or even just looking at it for a while, putting it in the shelf and smoking it off and throwing some sage that you picked off on the east side or in the desert, or even some creosote. Throw your medicine on it, because when I sing and I go to some of the funerals, I get up and my mother she'll make some cedar water and I'll put it on my face and I'll splash it, right to left, left to right, sometimes depending life or the spirit. So there's a lot that goes into wanting to have a gourd, be responsible for a gourd, or even somebody making one for you and even accepting that gourd, because you got to take care of it. It's a little person for you to help you. So these are things to remember when you're making a gourd, you're giving a gourd, you're receiving a gourd. To me, because it can affect your life, and what you're trying to do with your life. This is who we are as Hualapai people. Thank you. Hey, mahalo.
Gamu, Hualapai Baja, Nyamul, Richard Powski, Ichke. The Route 18 school on Fresh Wells is where it's located. The school operated back in the 20s and 30s. It was mainly established for the non-Indians to go to school there. There were people allowed to come on the reservation to raise cattle and to harvest the timber. And so those families that were there working, it was for their children that the school was built. The school was there for years because there was a community out there in that area at Fresh Wells, and that school remained, and it was built, I believe, by those people. It was not a BIA or government school. That school is old, and as people moved into town, then the school remained, and it would still remain back in the 60s and 70s, but it was abandoned and wasn't used anymore. You got to remember, at that time, pavement was not done on Route 18 at all. It was just a dirt road and narrow. It was hard to go from Supai to Peach Springs unless you had a good car, and the road was rough and you get flat tires, and very hard to get any help if you did break down out there. The mail did go out there, so I think people at that time depended on the mail delivery if they did break down or were stranded, to be able to flag down the mail person and let them know that they're there. And I think at times he may have been able to bring them in, but normally they don't do that. Today you can't do that as far as in a government vehicle pickup riders. That's not allowed. But back then they were able to do that. That was the school on Route 18. The old Valentine School, that was established by BIA back in the 1900s. It ended up operating until the 30s, 1930, but it might have closed sooner. My father, Willie Powski Sr., went to school there along with a number of Hualapai people at his age. The school was closed. Parents were not allowed to be at the school, just to have the kids dropped off. The school is established for a number of tribes to attend, not just Hualapai, but Supais, Mojaves, Hopis, Navajos. Different tribes all around were brought to the school in Valentine. Back in the 20s when they had the Spanish flu, it killed a number of people, tribal members as well as a lot of children at that school. So today now they're looking at all the BIA schools and government schools where all these children died. There are mass graves across the tracks in Valentine where those children were buried. The Valentine Cemetery was created because of that school, as well as the families that died during that pandemic are buried in Valentine. That cemetery is off the reservation, but the tribe eventually did get permits and title to that cemetery and exchanged some land with the BLM and private landowners down there to secure that cemetery in Valentine. That's the Valentine boarding school.
There was an old school, Valentine boarding school, and that's where all the older people went to school. My mom said that, well, my mom went there, and so did my grandfather, but that boarding school, it was a big school because they had all the different tribes from all over Arizona used to come and go to school there. You know, we had all the Hopi elders used to go to school there, and different tribes came, Navajo, different tribes were going to school there. They had a hospital there. My grandmother was Sioux. She came from South Dakota, and she was a nurse at that hospital. And she met my grandfather and married him. That's how we came to be here. But I'm 7/8 Hualapai and 1/8 Sioux. That school was there, and there's a lot of stories that we collected. But then we had a big burn in the training center, and it burned all those recordings. But that it talked about the boarding school. We asked about the boarding school, what happened there, and the elders, they used to always cry and talk about how they were punished and put in the cellars that are there. You could see the cellars yet behind those old buildings where they were shut in because they talked in Hualapai language and sang or danced. Back then they forbidden us to keep our traditional and our culture alive. But and it's a sad story. I know that my grandmother and my mother used to talk about how when they had that flu epidemic, all the kids died, and they went out in that big field across the railroad tracks and buried them behind a little clump of rocks. They made a big graveyard and buried all the kids that passed away. All the people really passed away in the hospital from that flu epidemic. And so it's kind of like how we were hit with that COVID, I guess, because we lost a lot of people then too.
Manya Helen Warhamaji Itka Bam Quikanava Itim Balu Wak Quikayuka Im Nyat Takatek Wakwakwanya. My name is Helen Warhamaji. I was born and raised here in Peach Springs, Arizona. I went to school in Peach Springs Elementary School. I lived in Chinatown all my life, off the highway, Highway 66, and that's what it's been called ever since I can remember growing up. After graduating from elementary, I went to school at Kingman High School, and I graduated down there. Some of my classmates, they went to boarding school, and I kind of wish that I did go to a boarding school, but since I was the only girl in my family, out of 9 boys, my parents didn't want me to leave home. After graduating from high school, I went to Haskell Indian Junior College. It was a junior college back then. I didn't get to finish there. I went 2 years, but I didn't finish. But when I came back, I got employed at the Peach Springs Elementary and continued my education at Mojave Community College. And I got my AA there. In the elementary school at the time I was working, I was a teacher aide for the bilingual program. And we had a lot of activities going on cultural-wise. We would take field trips. We did all kinds of stuff with the plants that were growing around this area. The kids were all involved, and the language was spoken at that time. The bilingual program was incorporated into the school, so we had bilingual classes. The director of that was Lucille Warhamaji, my sister-in-law, and my brother. They implemented a lot of the language activities and classes. So, and we even had jewelry making and basket making, all the stuff that now I hardly see.
I grew up here at age 5, and I attended the elementary school that's located here in Peach Springs. But back in my time, attending that Peach Springs Elementary, it was called Isabel Miller. And Isabel Miller was the one that fought for the place where the elementary school is now stationed at, and had them build a 4-room class for the Hualapai students. And in my time, my generation, we did not speak the English language. It was always our Hualapai language that was first spoken in our home. So my generation had a gap in understanding the instructors, given in instructors, and we'd ask one another, what was the instruction given by teacher? And we'll whisper to each other and explain. There was always one that would help the majority of the class to explain our instruction that was given in English. It was, for my generation, I believe that it was hard to understand, but we made it through our education there at Isabel Miller.
Taught Hualapai in the school system. We had teachers there, the late Beth Winika. We had Victor Mahone, Sonny Habitone, and we had the late Keith Mahone. They taught us a lot when we were children. We didn't know what they were teaching, because at that time I just knew that I was in an Indian reservation, and then I was Hualapai. Didn't know nothing about it until we started to go to school, from not just the elementary school, but in Head Start. They taught us how to sing. They taught us some songs. They taught us to dance, like how we do when we're having a wake.
This Music Mountain High School was built in the late 90s. Yeah, I was superintendent at the school. I wanted to go back and work on my doctorate, but that dream never came true. I just turned all my scholarship over to Damon Clark so he could get his doctorate. That school, when I was there in 2000, retired 2001, so it must have been about 99, 2000 that they built a school or working on the school, because I had to go and with the superintendent that proposed that high school was Mr. Parker. He and I and I think Joey Flies Away, we went down and talked to the Arizona State Department people, so that the board, and told them we wanted a high school. We had to talk fast because they weren't wanting to build any more high schools, but we told them that our place was isolated. Our children had to go to school in Kingman or go to boarding schools. So they approved it after we talked to them about the high school being built here. After I retired in 2001, so it was built after that.
Jakamicha, my name is Flora Selena, and I will be telling my story. What we were told by our great-grandparents when we lived in Mohawk, which was our family home. Our great-grandparents used this as their homestead, as a place where we all gathered and where we lived. All families came together. All families, all of our cousins, our relatives all came together to live in the canyon and to help one another. So I wasn't there alone. I was there with other siblings, other cousins, friends, neighbors, and we all gathered, we all played, and we had a simple life. My grandpa, they say, comes from Mohawk, and it originally was by the Colorado River. His dad's name was Indian Hunga. And he's the medicine man that they talk about that roams on top of the canyon. And that's where we come from. The people that go on the river trips, they talk about Indian Hunga, the medicine man, that they can hear his songs or they could hear him singing even today when they take their river trips. Before then, there were other tribes that lived there, the Hopi, the Paiute, the Mojave, and there was us that we all lived there. People came and people left. Our homestead is still there. The foundation is still there. But I also grew up in the days of when they had the buck wagons and that's how me and my grandma traveled to get water, to get food. Fraser Wells at one time was our community where we traveled to get our condiments. And it took us about a day to get from Mohawk to Fraser Wells on the buck wagon. But it was fun and I enjoyed it. And we met family along the way, and we spent nights with families that were harvesting piñons or banana yucca or whatever they were doing. We got to spend time with them. I got to play with other children my age and grandpas. They sat around the fire and they talked and laughed, and all of the women sat around the fire and they cooked. Then they prepared the meals and everybody came and sat together and ate, and women cleaned up, and we went out to play again. it was a fun time traveling to Fraser Wells, and you never knew who you were going to meet along the way. When we did get to Fraser Wells, which my grandpa built a home there as well, we stayed there. We went to the little store, and the sawmill was going at that time. But we went to the store. We got our flour, sugar, potatoes, coffee, all the main things that we needed. The next day, we traveled on our journey back home, and that took a little while to get there. But when we got home, we had everything we needed. The men, my grandpa, my uncles, which would be Claudius and which would be Saya, and which would be Man. We call him Ronald's Anatomy. They would be there waiting for us to come home so they could unload the water and get things put away for us. And we would just start cooking dinner and sit down and talk about our trip and tell the guys what we saw along the way. And they would tell us about their days and what they did. And they thought that was fun. Today, I look at myself and wonder why I am a really hard worker. And I tell my grandchildren and my children, I'm a hard worker because of my grandpa. My grandpa, he did the fencing projects. So every morning he would wake me up when he had no help. And he would say, come on, granddaughter, let's go. My grandma would pack my lunch, and away we go. And I had no clue where we were going. But we went along the way, and then we finally got to the site, and he would tell me what to do. He would give me gloves. He would give me a little hammer. He would give me all the tools that I needed. And I didn't know how to use them, so he would show me how to use them. He would tell me to pull the barbed wire, and I didn't want to touch it because I knew I was going to get cut. But he would tell me to pull it as hard as I could. And I'm only like maybe 6-7 years old, and I'm not very tall. So to pull that wire as tight as he wanted it, I'd be laying in the ground kicking and trying to pull it as tight as I could. And he would stand there and laugh at me, and he'll say, pull it, granddaughter, pull it, make it tighter. And I would do my best, and I would just have to keep moving back so the wire could get tighter. And eventually, by the end of the day, he would load me up and he'd take me home, and he'd sit around the fire, and he would tell my grandma how hard I worked. She would have to bandage me up because I was all scratched up and I was hurting and I was in pain, and she would heal me and take care of me. And my grandpa would laugh about all the things that I did and how I worked, but he would always praise me and say, you did a good job. And I remember the day when we finished and he came into town and he said, granddaughter, we're going to get paid. We're going to get paid today. So I was excited, and I really didn't know what money was. So I just knew I was going to get something. So we came into town. I guess they got paid because we went to Kingman and we went to the store called Babbitt's, and they bought me a fire truck. And that was my first toy I ever had, and I loved my fire truck, and that was my pay. That was my pay for working really hard with my grandpa and helping him fix the fence. And I always say that that's the reason why I'm a hard worker. I work hard, and I do my best at what I can do. And Grandpa taught me that. Living out in the country and living in Mohawk was awesome. My playground was the canyon, the trees, the horses, the cattle. You know, that was my playground, laying down, watching the eagles go overhead. My grandma would always say, sing to them, because when you see an eagle, you know, it's a good luck. To live in the country was interesting. It saddens me that my children, my grandchildren will not experience that life. But it's a beautiful life. It is, to grow up that way. Being raised in the country, in the canyon, being a country bumpkin and probably dirty and barefoot all the time, straggly hair, but had a beautiful time and have a beautiful growing up, I say. Han Kyu.
Kamyu, Hualapai Baja, Nyamul Richard Powski Ichke. Camp Bill Springs is a place down in Kingman. It's a spring that has existed there forever. It's in a high desert location in the Kingman area. The people would use that spring and it would run down from Bill Springs, the creek, and down through the pass where it goes down into Golden Valley area. During the time when the soldiers came, they built a camp there for the military, and the fort was called Camp Bill Springs. As the Hualapai Wars were ongoing back in the 1800s, the Hualapais were in the area. The tribes and bands were rounded up and taken to Bill Springs. From the Camp Bill Springs, they relocated the Hualapai people from that Kingman area, all the way down to La Paz on the Colorado River Indian Reservation. And so that's what we call the Long Walk. That spring has been there forever. It's a sacred spring as well. The people use that. And today the city of Kingman gets much of its water from that spring that supplies the city with their drinking water. To the Hualapai, that's a spring that we've always known and utilize. It's important to the people. There's a lot of history there and a lot of artifacts as well when the military was there and even prior to the military. Kingman is a very important area because there are other springs and other water sources coming out of the Surbats into that area around Kingman. There are sacred areas in those canyons there where people lived. The Indian camp in Kingman had been moved a number of times until where it is today, down across the tracks. Some of that land has gone out of those families' holdings and been sold to the public. So a lot of families that had lands and home sites in Kingman no longer own those because taxes were not paid. And those parcels were sold on the courthouse steps to people who bought those lots. But Camp Bill Springs is very important regarding the long walk for Hualapai to La Paz, and it still exists there today. Today they're going to do a bypass onto Highway 93 that goes to Las Vegas out of Kingman, which is going to come right through Camp Bill Springs. They're going to build some, I guess, high overpasses over it, but it's going to be right there at the spring. The Hualapai Tribe had no say in it. They were not contacted or given any kind of participation in how they're going to put that roadway through Camp Bill Springs. It is a project with the Arizona Department of Transportation, National Highway, Federal Highways, and the city of Kingman. Hualapai is not in those talks with those three entities. That road work is happening today in 2024 and should be done in another year or so.
Good afternoon. My name's Waylon Honga. Nya Mađvich My Homeland. The Skywalk, it was part of the administration at GCRC. We signed the agreement to build the Skywalk in, I believe, 2003. Construction started in 2006 and it opened in 2007. I like to think that Millie Grover came up with the idea for the Skywalk because I worked at Grand Canyon West in 1996. And I got to know the workers who had been there from the beginning. One of them was Millie Grover. Don Havitone was another. Jerome Sullivan, Ricky Grover. I think my uncle Delmar Honga were some of the Hualapais that worked there from the beginning. That one structure that's made out of steel that held a trolley that went over the Grand Canyon. Millie Grover said, we should encase that in glass, fix the stairs, and then people could walk up there and, have a 360 view and look at the Grand Canyon. I think she's the person that came up with the idea of making the skywalk. But of course, not too many people know that. I thought it was going to be hard to do, to get it built. It was a big project. It was out of your comfort zone. It was so very different. It was a gigantic step. It was a gigantic leap. And I'm a little bit surprised that it did happen. Sherry Yellowhawk was the CEO at the time, and she was a smart lady. And she was on tribal council, and so was I. And we had board members that were in favor of it, that supported it. And I think it was having all those tribal members that were on council, that were on the board, that were part of the executive management team at GCRC, all pushing in the same direction, all rowing in the same direction, that helped us get it built, because we needed tribal council approval. We needed buy-in from tribal members, and it got done. I think Sherry Yellowhawk was one of the driving factors. I think we should never forget that, because look what it's brought us. I left GCRC in 2013. And I believe in 2018, GCRC was bringing in $110 million, or that was the best year they ever had. They had 500 or 600 jobs out there with tourism. I think we had more jobs than we had tribal members, members 18 to 64. So we're doing pretty good for a small tribe in the middle of nowhere. And I'm proud of that. And we should all know that. We should all remember that. When they were building the skywalk, we had engineering magazines coming out to tour the site, because they wanted to write a story on the engineering that was going on behind to put that skywalk in place. Architecture magazines coming out to the same thing, so they could get the scoop and write a story of what we were doing. We had magazines and newspapers from all over the world coming to see what the tribe was doing. We got attention worldwide. I want to say easily 2,000 articles were written about it. We had a marketing company out of Las Vegas that tracked all of that and probably kept a copy of every article at the time. And so we got a lot of free publicity. When we opened the skywalk in March of 2007, it doubled, almost tripled our revenues instantly, overnight. We had so many customers coming in, and we weren't ready. I hate to say that. We weren't ready for the flood of customers that came in, which might be a good problem to have. It was. But we weren't ready, but we got over that hump, and that was going on 20 years now, in 2027. Grand Canyon West opened in February of 1988, and I think before the Hualapai Tribe opened up Grand Canyon West, I think we were probably just as poor as any tribe on this planet. I think we were struggling. I was a kid. I was a youngster, 20 years old, and before the skywalk opened. Before Grand Canyon West opened. And so I don't know all the details. Didn't have kids, didn't see the struggles or know the struggles, because I didn't have children and wasn't living on my own. But I think there was a lot of struggles here in Peach Springs prior to the tribal government open up Grand Canyon West for tourism. I think Hualapai is one of the best tribes in the U.S. because we're doing good without a casino, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. The tribes that are doing super well in casino gaming, they're right next to metropolitan areas. And we don't have casino gaming. We're way out in the rural setting, and we're still doing okay. When it comes to jobs and revenue, we're doing okay. We're holding our own.
Gamucha Nya Rosemary Sullivan Iksichgam Hualapai Wanya. I'll just talk about what my mom told me about ribbon dresses and how they started. But she said that they used to make them from flour sacks, because the flour sacks back in the day were flowery cotton material. And then she said the ribbons that were put on there, one of my other friends said that they used rickrack, because rickrack was pretty prominent as a decoration back then. They used rickrack. And then they found the ribbon. I think the ribbon's probably, to me, is more of a Spaniard influence. But they said the more ribbons that you had on your dress was the distinction of where you were in the I guess, monetary wise, maybe, or showed that you were able to pay for it or you're able to afford that. It was mostly cotton dresses because they called them everyday dress because all the ladies wore the cotton dresses. And that's just how they got everything done. There was just a lot of work to be done, the harvesting, like I said, the canning and all that. There was just a lot of things that they had to do. And it was mostly in cotton dresses. And I think the satin dresses were more of an influence later on, I think, from the Spanish. I've been looking for the cotton material that kind of looks like the old flower sack print. I'm still looking. I know there's some out there, but I have to take the time to do that. But that's where I know about the ribbon dresses. And they were simple. They weren't really elaborate or anything. And they're just strips of ribbons that went along the bottom of the dress. Now, when they started using the satin, and Keith Mahone always told us to put a black ribbon on the bottom. And that was because of the ones that had passed, or just to recognize the ones that have gone before us. Always put a black ribbon on the bottom of your dress. I don't see many people doing that anymore. And you can use any of the colors, but they always use the colors like they do in the seal of what they represent, or the fire colors, or the ones that represent the sky, or the ones that represent our mountains or the trees. Just those colors are just something that are significant to us, and that's all I know about that. Han Kyu.
Kamyucha, Rochelle Kennedy. I was born in Tuba City, Arizona. I live here now in Peach Springs, Arizona. I've lived here for 13 years now. I did live here when I was in my middle school, high school years. Graduated from Kingman High School as a Bulldog in 2001. And what would you say to those who want or are going to leave Peach Springs? It's a good opportunity. My mom and dad have asked that question a lot. And it was funny because they weren't judgmental about it. They were just, are you going to leave? Oh, yeah, I might. I think it's good. If you want to go that way, I think it's good and you should try it. But you can always come home, you know? And I find myself always coming home anyway, you know, just to visit or just to see them, see how it looks. When I came back, everything had grown just a little bit, not too much. Our family had grown. We had our sisters and stuff started leaving the house as well as we were getting older. Things started to change. They got their own places, or they got their own, now they have their own kids. I'm going to say, if you want to leave, it's good. If you get your opportunity, take the chance and see what you can learn from it. It's okay to fall. I'm learning that as a parent now, that no choice is a bad decision. It's just you're choosing your hard. So whatever decision you make, it's not either good or bad. It's just a choice. And when the choice is there for you, that's where you're going to tell yourself, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to go next. This is what I'm going to do forward. That helps push you out that door. If those that want to leave and they're going to leave Peach Springs, you know, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of things out there. If you feel like you should, you should. And it gives you a different perspective in life. I found that it helped me understand people in general.
Kamyucha, that Louise Benson Mulia. My maiden name was Mahone. I'm Yakwakwawa etim Alpai Kwawa Brayuta Kaka Nat Kwepai Sapoi Istopet to remember was evil about it. Even so, Yak Bam Etim Kwawa Etikima Etim Hualapai Kwawa Etim youth kang by imatohi matet yam evjangama nyat 9 June 26, 1942. I was born. Vama, 82 years old. I used good of what you do on board at home. What we can fellow tracks how what we eat. Bavita, Bemkin, Saltao, Gamdak, Bemum, Hakuwekjum, Gunauka, Subjokwam Oejik, Yetikavum, Vertikavuk, Eugenia, Hamtokeja, maybe 5 years old. Matet, on board, but you come on mutuum. Hello, you England, the music by Eugene, so Bam got new witch yet to Nyam Army, youth was them. I think it was Clara Talaju Matkin. Yum Kai Man, young boy, yum Hakamiji, when you on board Altameka, Kamiji, when Mula Bam is a mere aya. You what we not die Jaquina heard eat Mula Matkin from Supai and and sister we had we chicken diajum you cup you yam next to talk yam net new I mean new pay me committee queen youth I was not old enough but I remember and it was good. Our people, by Haktikavuk, Kuikiutik, Yetikavu, by Mary Jane Wawa, Hakatikavuka, Yamaka, Ichik, Uitik, but the Matjuina. That's what I remember as a youngster. When the great quadratum by you, when Nikanavjum, took Uksapoya, and Hamhayum, Boy, the end.
Photo participants: Liam Least, Layla Least, Lila Bartle, Melina Sky Hill, Leatrice Willima, Martin Jackson, Ayura Vida Russell, Jessica Powski, Elliot Herman Yazi, Courtney Beecher, Calliope Cabrera, Marissa Hutchins, Mitchell Beecher, Lethan Beecher, Jackson Watanabe, Donray Watanabe, Delina Parker, Mateo Delgado, Mathis Delgado, Flora Selena, Shelby Gonzalez, Azaniah Moore, and Benito Montana. We would like to thank the families that helped with fulfilling the vision of the book. We made this to give back to the tribe and to be given out and passed through generations to come. We wanted to show our history and beauty of our land, our nature, our culture, and our everyday normal lives within our lens. With the help of the ITCA funding, we are also able to bring this book to life. We also wish to represent our children through this book to encourage them to learn more about Hualapai and to encourage each other. Though we only captured a snapshot of the Hualapai Nation, we hope to inspire others to expand and show the beauty of Hualapai.